Exxon Mobil, ticker symbol is XOM. This is an oil and gas company in the United States. Pays a dividend 4 times a year. It pays 91 cents per share, and each share will cost you $105. So the dividend yield is about 3.3%, and it does have a nice history of raising its dividends. It dropped about 4.2% today so far, but over the last couple of years it has recovered and excelled since 2020, which is down here. But it popped up on my radar today. Kind of surprised me a bit with how small my position is. I would have thought it would be much larger. So I'm going to have to add to this pretty soon. But also because of a recent acquisition of a company called Pioneer Natural Resources. So Exxon and Mobil were two separate companies. They merged in 1999. And now this is the largest merger since Exxon and Mobil became one. It's a $60 billion deal. But it is also a bet that US energy policy will not move against fossil fuels in a major way. So they're doubling down on fossil fuels a little bit. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, this article is on the New York Times if you want to have a look at it yourself, but it did drop 5% today, so maybe some people know some things that we don't, or the general consensus is that this was not a good idea. But as I always say, time will tell. But as far as dividend stocks go, this is quite a popular one, and it seems like quite a reliable one. The energy sector itself is quite cyclical, so as anyone who's been in the market for the last even 5 years will tell you, 2020 was a hellish year for oil stocks, and ever since then they've absolutely exploded. But ExxonMobil itself pays a dividend of $3.64 per year, split across 4 payments. That's a yield of about 3.4%, and their current payout ratio is 29%, so they're paying 29% of their profits out as dividends to investors. And then the average of the energy sector is a dividend yield of 3.8%, so it's about the same, and a payout ratio of about 38%. So ExxonMobil is doing better in that regard. It's paying less of its profits out to shareholders, which, although is not great for us, it is better for the company, and that's what we want in the long run. And here's a quick look at the dividend yield when compared to the energy sector in general, the oil and gas integrated industry, and then ExxonMobil's peers, so similar companies. It's been paying dividends since 1994, but because the stock is up 12% in the last year, the dividend yield marks a decrease of 7%. However, dividend yield is just one of many metrics to measure a stock and to make a decision, so it's not the be-all and end-all. Now, this graph goes back to 1983, and the merger between Exxon and Mobil happened in 1999. So this is pretty much the whole history. This is about as much information as we can get. And as you can see, it's been like a bit of a roller coaster, quite a bit, ups and downs. But this big drop down here, that's 2020. I think that was the worst year for oil stocks in 4 decades. Awful. And then since then, absolutely exploded. Now, whether that's profiteering or if it's out of the control of the companies in the sector, I don't personally know. But it is a very volatile industry. So the lowest ExxonMobil has been in the last year is $97, and the highest is $120. So it's about in the middle. And it's very difficult to see from this section of the graph up here what could happen. It could go way higher, it could go way lower. But my average price is quite high, so I myself will probably wait a little while just to kind of see what happens maybe over the next year before I add more to my position. So I started my position on the 21st of June of 2021, and I'm up about 13%, but I have added little bits in as time went on, and it's brought my average price up. Now, hopefully it takes a bit of a dive and I can add more in for cheaper. So I'll leave the company details up here, but it's basically an oil and gas company in the United States. It's a big one, 62,000 employees. Its current value, decided by the stock market, which is its market cap, is $444 billion. Has a PE ratio, which is a price to earnings ratio, of 7.8, which is lower than the peer average. So it's trading at a more valuable price, or a better price, than its peer average. Its current revenue is about $400 billion, has an earnings per share of $14.22, which is very nice, and it has a good dividend yield of 3.2%. Now there's also a financial summary here. I'll leave that up if you want to have a read through it. But it looks like quite a lot of decreases of revenues, decrease in net income, different segments are decreasing. So they have a pretty good profit margin, about 14% over the last year, and about 10% over the last quarter. Their debt to assets ratio is also quite good, only 47%. And over the last quarter is about 45%. And their annual cash flow from operating is $76 billion. From investing is about negative $15 billion. And from financing is negative $40 billion. But it will be very interesting to see what this new acquisition holds for them. They're betting on the continued use of fossil fuels, and I don't follow politics too heavily, but as far as I know, the current administration, which is Biden's one, wants to have everybody driving electric cars by 2030. So obviously the world is a lot bigger than the United States, but this is a US based company, so I can see a lot of people not having a lot of faith in that decision. But in all fairness, what do I know? Now a quick look at the dividend history. If you go down to the very bottom of it, this goes back to 1995, which is a great full scale of what they've been paying. And it seems like they have been paying the 4 dividends per year since then. Huge drop down to 2 cents a share in 2001. Yeah, no, it's only a single payment. That's a massive drop down. And then since then, seems to be steadily rising year on year, which is what we always like to see in a dividend paying stock. And then we get up to where we are now. So although the oil industry and the energy sector is quite volatile, this is a very consistent dividend payment history. So to wrap it up, Exxon Mobil. The ticker symbol is XOM. One share costs $105, pays 91 cents per share. It's in the oil and gas industry. Its current dividend yield is 3.3%, pays a dividend 4 times a year, has a nice profit margin of 14% over the last year, dividend payout ratio of about 29%, and a debt to assets ratio of about 47%. So let me know what you think of it, and also what you think of the recent acquisition for $60 billion to double down on the use of fossil fuels. Well, that's all for this one, and I hope that you found this useful.